Hello YouTube! Commando bringing you another novel, a visual novel. I really enjoyed doing Sakura Spirit. I don't know if this is an Edo game of any kind, but you know, I just really enjoyed it. Welcome to World End Economica, or World End Economica. That's what it says in katakana on the bottom there. I am not fluent in Japanese whatsoever, so don't count on me to read anything in Japanese ever. Anyways, I'm gonna be playing this game in English, so let's get going in the English mode. Start. In the past, people really believed that there was a doorway to an alternate world on the dark side of the moon. This dark side could not be seen from Earth, and it was only a few decades ago that images were successfully taken of it. As Earth had been visited, mapped, and divested of all its mysteries and secrets, it was made painfully clear that there were no rabbits on the moon, no traces of aliens, and certainly no pieces of portals to an alternate worlds. This was perhaps why the journey to the dark side of the moon through the vastness of space was so fascinating for me when my parents took me there as a kid. It's gonna take a while for my mouth to warm up, pardon my stuttering. Mankind had never set foot upon any of the glittering stars that were arrayed before me. When I realized that, I felt a desire to leave my footprints where no one had gone before. It wasn't until after I learned more about the world that it dawned on me that what a foolhardy dream that was. Regardless, it was something that shook to the core so much that I nearly wet my pants. Afterwards, everything before me became a stepping stone in my mind, towards my dream of setting foot where no one had gone before. I had no time to waste. If I didn't act now, then someone else would leave their footprints there first. Faster. Faster. Much faster. Insert dirty joke. The population continued to grow, and time ruthlessly slipped away. Excuse me. Only a handful could be the vanguard of it all. Not a day went by where I didn't ponder what I could see. It would be a new frontier where familiar places, customs, and the past would not exist. A frontier where every small movement I made would become part of history. The footprints of the first humans on the moon could still be found preserved in the Sea of Tranquility Memorial Hall. Those footprints told uncountable tales. Footprints left in the sand, measuring just shy of 30 inches. Even so, they were amazing footprints that sent shivers down my spine. This guy's got like a little fetish for the moon. Or his ambitions and goals. Whatever they are. With a click, my mobile PC turned on. I awoke to the whirring of the hard drive. Since I had fallen asleep curled up in my chair, clutching my PC, it was difficult to get my body to move. My body felt so stiff I was sure that a careless motion would break something. Even so, I rather enjoyed the sensation of slowly stretching out my limbs from this cramped position after waking up. It made me feel alive and truly let me know that I was awake. I willed my arms to move, then my legs. Although hardly efficient, this was how I chose to do things, and was what happened when I woke up every morning. It was a satisfying action and one I never had a chance to savor before I left home. On top of the table, I had left my rather crude diode lamp on, and a coarse layer of fat had formed on the surface of the leftover coffee in my dirty cup. Dirty. Beside my cup was a half-eaten chocolate bar, which I reached for and crammed into my mouth. Good breakfast. I swallowed the unpleasantly sweet chunk as the Why is it unpleasant? It's chocolate. As the PC finished booting up. At that moment, my brain went to work as I verified that I had my wallet, my memory cards, and bag on me, and that none of it had been stolen while I was asleep. It appeared that I had survived that previous night. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. However, in order for me to survive today, I would have to make some money. It had been 3 months and 12 days since I left home. Telling myself that I wasn't just some well-to-do kid pretending to be a ruffian, I flipped open the organic display. Hey, it looks like a PC room. PC bang, which is in Korean. I was staying in a cheap net cafe, that's what they would call it. It was a good-for-nothing establishment that leached Wi-Fi from another shop, and its customers were of equally questionable quality. Sounds pretty shady, but the picture looks really nice. Whoa. Green afro. The moon's a wild place, guys. Oh, excuse me. Hey kid, a fine morning it is, isn't it? As I left the booth to go wash my face, an unkempt clerk greeted me as he played a game at the counter. I figured he wasn't so much being friendly as much as he was making sure I knew he was watching me. The only entrance and exit were next to the counter, and off to the side on the wall were the words, "Everyone pays, no freeloaders." Even though the sad excuse for a building was built in a sewage canal, money was always collected. This is some crazy music we got here. The only thing that concerned me when I left home was finding a place to sleep. Oh, I'm a runaway, okay. Or not me, but rather the protagonist is a runaway. Though I had some money, I couldn't really change my appearance. Fine morning? I'm not fond of your sarcasm, Earth Dog. Whoa. Got some racism here, or whatever planetarianism here. Planet of Origin-ism here. I don't know what to call it. The clerk's face twisted into a smile at my retort. Oh no. It is unfortunate to know what a real morning looks like since the weather here is just a computer program. Ah. We're on the moon, right? It seems like it. He said that lightly as he returned his gaze to his game. He seemed to be from Earth, though I wonder if he came to the moon as unskilled labor, got fired, and ended up here as an outcast of some sort. Why don't you head on back to Earth then? At my words, he turned briefly to glance at me and laughed sarcastically. Things are a bit better here than down there anyhow. That's how he responded. Moon scum. Without responding, I went to the washroom. Moon scum. Moon scum. Sweet deal. My name's Yoshiharu Kawaura. It's a mouthful. I was born and raised in this lunar city, so I was genuine moon scum. I returned to my booth, entered my password, and booted up the tool application on my computer. A welcome screen whose only point was its friendliness was followed by a merciless and desolate landscape, much akin to the surface of the moon. Countless lines of words flickered on the screen. I imagine it's the kind of effect you'd get if you took a picture of the undeveloped part of the moon's surface with a low-res camera. This music is like... I feel like the music is out of place right now, but whatever. The screen showed a session of the Lunar Stock Exchange. This was the kind of place for the moon scum like me to make a living. I'll get rich without needing to break a sweat. I didn't have enough time to earn an honest living. I took a deep breath and went about business. Hey! On this game I could actually see the protagonist. Cool. Or visual novel. Downward revision for the first fiscal quarter of CK Bio. Possibility of an investigation over suspicions of collusion regarding inflation. The board of directors at the Lunar Central Bank. With one eye on that stream of news, I focused on managing 220 stocks, picking up those with large price fluctuations. For instance, if one stock had moved 10% on the previous day and another had moved 1%, there was probably a high chance that the stock that moved 10% could move by 1% today. I would trade it on that notion alone. Putting into consideration the mood of the market based on the news, I would buy stocks with large fluctuations. Within the turbulent and up and down movement of the price, I could extract some profit, which is what I occupied myself with between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. lunar time. Breathe! Between those hours, the only things that went into my mouth were food that I could eat one-handed and drink. To be honest, I'd be engrossed in trading that breaks were uncommon. Even if I had the free time to take a break, I'd rather use it to look at my screen to grasp price fluctuations and do some trades. After all, a difference of a few minutes when making the call to buy or sell could easily mean the difference between gaining or losing 1 or 2%. My war chest was 772,000 mools. Mools reminds me of Bools from my Gods Will Be Watching. Anyways, 1% of that came out to 700 mools. 720 moles? A store clerk would make about 7 moles an hour at best. This was a place where a public school teacher's monthly starting salary was 1,200 moles, so I could make in a few minutes what they'd make in a month. That's actually pretty badass for a kid. Of course, over the course of a day's trading, some people would win and others would lose, but I was on the winning streak of all streaks, and before I knew it, my seed money of 1,000 moles had ballooned to 72 times that. The one and only time I did honest, hard labor in my life was to build that seed money. Since then, I'd just been building my assets through these trades. While the gains were a little less than what they used to be, the greater your assets grew, the faster they grew, so it didn't worry me. It'd be what they'd call a snowball effect. I've never seen snow before, but I've seen videos of Earth before, and thus I was familiar with it. I had decided that I was going to make even more money and then live in the center of this lunar city. It's a place where tons of ridiculously smart people were gathered. It's said that 70% of this world's wealth was held by people there. Interesting. I'd live it up there, and then the back of my head was high on these kinds of delusions as I performed trade after trade like a possessed man. That's why it took me a while to notice. I finally did after I got smacked on the head. Ow. Yo, kid. I turned around to see that the clerk standing in front of the booth's opened door. What? You want money? Since when did this case become prepay? Or what? Was it something else? Was making money not allowed here? What do you want? I'm busy. As I glared at him, the overly skinny, bleary-eyed clerk let out a tired sigh. That's your reply? I can't. What? Oh. What? Screen flashed and I lost. Okay, the text hasn't changed. I'm sorry. Enough stuttering. I came to tell you that the police are on their way to gather up the street urchins and... Before the clerk finished his sentence, my PC had been closed and thrown into my bag. Hey, wait! The employee grabbed my shoulder as I tried to push him aside and exit the booth. Though he was thin, he was still muscular, strong enough to remind you that he was an adult. Still, I always kept a set amount of money in my breast pocket for times like this. I grabbed it and thrust it into his hand. Keep the change! I put it on my hat, shouldered my bag, and ran down a narrow corridor. Wondering what was going on in the booth, a bunch of guys who looked like they just mumble useless replies to any police questioning peeked through the cracks from their booths, wondering if someone had been arrested. Cue action music. After sliding past the dirty counter, I made it to the store's even filthier exit. The chipped away paint and rust made the already cramped building feel even more claustrophobic. I ran straight down the hallway towards the open air. There were stairs if I turned left and at the end of the hall, but I had never had any plans to use them in the first place. So he's planned this out. I guess he's planned his escape plan out, if that makes sense. Without a moment's hesitation, I kicked off the floor. Jumping as high as I could, passing over the concrete wall, my body flew out over the street. What? Because the cafe was on the 5th floor of the building, there was a heck of a view below me. Oh, we're on the moon. Maybe the gravity's lower or something? I jumped towards the wall of the building opposite of me and then kicked off from that wall, aiming back towards the wall of the first building. Or he's a ninja. Once the sole of my foot hit a pipe on the wall, I jumped straight up with all of strength and my resolve. My strength and resolve. Human genes had been fine-tuned for living on Earth over millions of years, so with some weight training, anyone could perform feats like these on the moon, where the gravity was lower. I want to do that too. What you couldn't do was to allow yourself to miss your daily training. Jumping from wall to wall, I quickly reached the 14th floor of the building next door. I guess my heart rate did go up a bit. I glanced down to see a pair of blue uniformed policemen looking bored as they tapped their batons on their shoulders and climbed the stairs. It seemed that that clerk wasn't playing a prank on me when he gave me that tip. I already paid my thanks to him when I handed him that money, though. By now, he should probably have already used the change from it to kick back with a store-bought beer. For a moment, I opened my bag in the hallway and flipped open my PC screen. I ran off in the middle of a trade, and so my position hasn't changed. I should be able to get at least a weak wireless connection out here. If I were lucky, prices would have risen and I'd be home free, but usually at times like this, ugh, figures. After hanging my head in disappointment, I closed out my losing positions and called it a day. Guess it wasn't such good news. What? Nothing good could come from wandering around downtown in the middle of the day. After jumping from one building to the next, I decided to walk down a deserted hallway towards my favorite Chinese restaurant. It was the first time. Where'd the first come from? It was the time of day when most people my age would be at school, so walking around carelessly would get you chased down by the cops before you knew it. Until you turned 18, the legal age here, it was mandatory that you legal age to be an adult, probably. It was mandatory that you belong to some sort of educational institution. Some people would say that this was a good thing, while others grumbled something about government-funded programs. I fell into neither camp. My way of dealing with systems I didn't like was to quietly escape them, not too loudly criticize them. On that note, this area with all of its complicated passages and extreme elevation changes, it's not odd to see the 7th floor of the one building be next to the basement of another. Huh. Elevation changes like that. That's weird. Was convenient for people like me. Not to mention the overgrown vegetation here and there that acted as good cover. These plants weren't originally included in the city plans, but had leaked out of one of the many lunar laboratories where they were messing with their genes. We're so in the future if this is a world that's like our own. Supposedly, genes had tons of factors that express themselves differently depending on the environment, so a lot of plants and animals started acting strangely as soon as they were brought to the moon. Strange. There were even people saying that life forms on Earth could have originated from outer space and brought to Earth via the moon. Always a possibility in any world. Some of these plants grew so well on the moon's inorganic matter that you might wonder if they'd been around here for a million years. Of course, it wasn't as if these plants were free from the laws of physics. Nitrogen and other nutrients for them were often brought over from Earth, so I hadn't heard about any worries that the surface of the moon would be taken over by the greenery. This applied to more than just plants. As for humans here, it didn't matter how many ultra-elite think tanks came to energize the lunar economy and its industries. Life here just wasn't sustainable without sending a lot of things over from Earth. According to the government statements, even if the orbital elevator connecting Earth and Moon, probably, right? That's badass if it is. Though not the first time I've heard of it, of course. Even if the orbital elevator were to stop moving today, there was currently enough biomass here to create an enclosed, recycling-based environment, meaning self-sustainable, probably. In other words, we'd be able to eat food, crap it out, then use that crap to grow more food to eat, and so on. Yep, so the moon is self-sustainable at this current moment. That's good news for the moon people. They'd be able to make a ton of electricity with solar panels while collecting direct sunlight to use as a super source of heat. So maybe they're right. I mean, people even say that Earth was in more danger environmentally, since they're still relying on oil and nuclear power. I guess the future hasn't changed much in terms of energy sources, though solar being used in a way where it's sustainable is actually a pretty good future, if at all possible in our life. Just so you guys know, solar power, solar panel, photovoltaic, solar panels are only 20% efficient or so at best. Hence the reason it's hard to invest into solar energy at the current moment. Although that's a different story. I didn't know who was right. Whatever the case, I had dreams, and if it meant making my dreams come true, I didn't care if I was on Earth or on the moon. After all, my dream was to stand at the forefront of humanity. It'd be a place where you could only look forward and live by advancing onward. Who cared about what happened to the world behind you? And if I couldn't make this dream come true, then there'd be no reason for me to live. That was why, to put it logically, I never worried a single bit about the moon's environment or whatever. What I worried about was how much money I made and how fast I reached my goals. Egocentric. While I was thinking about these things, I passed through the thickly vegetated tunnel towards high ground. You know, I like I actually really like the art direction so far. One thing Sakura Spirit really lacked was not boobs for sure. It was actually like a change in background. Like this one, we've already seen 5 or 6 changes in the back panel. It's pretty nice. I like the art for sure. It was a clear day, as it always was. On the other side of a translucent membrane, the visible half of the mist-covered Earth looked small. Oh, the Earth's on the left. Huh, cool. The sky over the lunar city was wrapped in a see-through dome, and right beyond it was outer space. Gravity was weak on the moon, so you couldn't naturally keep large amounts of gases stored up on the surface. Also, while apparently each 24-hour day on Earth had a morning, afternoon, and night, which was followed the next day by another morning, the moon alternated between 2 week days and 2 week nights. That's gotta screw up your circadian rhythm or whatever it's called, biorhythm or whatever. However, the human body cycle was set differently, thanks to tens of thousands of years of living on Earth. Because most of the people living on the moon were immigrants from Earth, its dome was adjusted to give off light in an Earth-like way. It even had sprinklers attached to it so that it would rain. However, I'd only seen things like downpours and thunderstorms in videos. When it rained here, it was always just a drizzle. Strong winds never blew here. That sounds about accurate for a dome enclosed city. The only winds felt here were the low coiling movement of the atmosphere due to centrifugal and Coriolis forces, as well as the gentle breeze of the air inside the dome being mechanically circulated. I strayed from the street onto a grass-covered cliff and jumped upward with a grunt. I kicked off a tree branch and rotated my body to land on the top of the tunnel. This was a box seat where you can look down on the greater part of the city. Yeah, I definitely like the art direction thus far. Pretty nice and cool-looking city. I grabbed some beef jerky out of my bag and bit into it. According to the guys who came from Earth, this wasn't at all close to the real thing, but it's only beef jerky I knew. It's the only beef jerky I knew. There were a number of cities on the moon. The one I lived in was the very first city to be created, and I could get a clear view of the whole thing from here, or something along those lines. The spot in front of me where pointed skyscrapers sprung upward, one after the other, was called Newton City. It wasn't like entry here was regulated. However, it had the feeling of a special zone where only certain people could enter, since it was full of giant corporate buildings. Even public places like shopping malls and parks were overrun with police and city regulations. Most wealth here was created in Newton City, and you could find famous tycoons with assets worth over 10 billion mules all over the place. If you had that much wealth, you'd undoubtedly be able to be on the forefront when humanity took its next step. Money could make just about any desire you might have in this world come true. In this world, money ruled all. Like a photograph of the moment a drop of liquid hit a pool of water, a group of skyscrapers stood in the dead center of Newton City. Okay. I see what they're trying to say now. While the buildings around that area were suddenly much shorter. That area was where middle-class people worked in Green City. I'm kind of getting bored of the introductions, but I gotta keep going. It was a place full of people who loved words like high society and refinement, the kind of people who claimed to care about grace and harmony, but were really full of nothing but pride and obsessions with upward mobility. Whenever I went there, I felt sick seeing the sterilized rows of small, nicely manicured lawns and white-walled buildings. There wasn't a single piece of garbage on the streets, and the only plants around were domesticated trees on the roadside. After that, the buildings in the area around Green City got taller again, but it was a complete jumble. There, power lines dangled messily onto the streets, and vulgar neon signs lit the area. Sounds a lot like a red light district type of area. Painting the whole place with the feel of squalor. Oh, squalor. Okay. It's a squalid area, whatever. The area was called the outer sections, and while technically they'd all been numbered from 1 to 8, there was no real point. If you consider Newton City the center of everything, the north was full of factories, There you could find silicone dioxide dissolution factories, fertilizer synthesis factories, automated plantations, and so on. On the east side was the village where I lived. That area was notorious for its hard-nosed residents. You could also find settlements of old-timers whom you might call artisans in the area, which made for a countless number of small workshops. Most people didn't have the luxury of being able to do something like that, like transport wooden furniture via orbital elevator, and land was expensive on the moon. So the houses of Green City were small. As a result, handmade furniture created with the size and shape of your house in mind was far more popular than ready-made furniture. I was told that my parents were aiming to live together with plants brought from Earth in exchange for making furniture out of wood. Even though factories existed that used the best scientific advances to maximize harvest rates as much as physically possible, they still grew plants by hand for some reason. They seemed to at least have their customers, but I didn't see a single enjoyable thing about being covered in dirt. It just made me wonder why they even came to the moon in the first place. This wasn't a place for stuff like that. The moon was supposed to be a place where you directed your gaze to the top of the inorganic buildings that lined Newton City. This guy has a very strong opinionated set of mindset. And if I shifted my eyes to the left, I saw an area haunted by those who couldn't keep up in that struggle. Here, when buildings started rusting, no one would bother to repaint them. It had been nicknamed the Red Valley. The reason it was called a valley was because when Newton City was originally built on a flat crater floor, all the low-income earners made the Rocky Mountains around the city their home. And by Rocky Mountains, I don't quite mean something like the harsh mountainous environments you might find on Earth. It was actually closer to what you might call highlands. As a result, the rock was chipped away to increase surface area like a river eroding hills, and many structures could be built in a tight area by terracing the slopes. Furthermore, more space was secured by digging caves into the rocky stretches. It was clearly evident that doing this over and over made for a mess of a city. Not much more than a decade had passed since the city's establishment, and it had already become such a devilish haunt that you couldn't blame the local government if they just threw up their hands and gave up. As for me, I liked the Red Valley with its level of squalor. While it was true that the people living there could be called outcasts and failures, the place was irresponsible in a good way, and that put me at ease. Irresponsible in a good way. Of course, I had no intentions of becoming the 20% that lived there. And finally, the area around where I was right now was called the 6th Outer Section. It was not as degenerate as the Red Valley, but it was not quite as productive as the east side of town. This area didn't even have a nickname yet, and its lackadaisical aspects oozed out at every turn. While the buildings were dirty and worn out, it was dotted with small companies who dreamed of Newton City and the occasional decent-looking house, so it wasn't the worst place to live. Whoa. Screen shake, flash. I stood up, hopped back to the street, and jogged off. Okay. Fresh moon, fresh store. Fresh moon, fresh store. The road was paved with neatly shaved limestone. It was chipped and cracked here and there, but no one ever tried to patch it. The rough dirt of the moon had piled up in its recesses. Waterways were occasionally visible, and in them you could see clear running water, as well as fish swimming. While hydrogen was available on the moon, there was no water, so once hydrogen had been synthesized into water, it was made sure that every drop remained circulating within the dome. The waterway's final destination was the giant water processing plant under Newton City. In other words, everything was designed to gather in the center of the mortar-shaped city, whether it's people, water, or wealth. That's actually kind of an interesting notion. From there, everything was dismantled, not dismantled, disseminated outward. After crossing the intricate waterways and bridges, I passed through a narrow alley and reached my destination. It was called the Lunar Chinese Restaurant. That's right, we were going to a Chinese restaurant. It's run by a Chinese husband and wife with a strong spirit of enterprise who emigrated to the moon. I could sit down here from early afternoon to whenever and they wouldn't say a word. However, the elderly wife's health had been fading recently, and the woman who sometimes worked at the restaurant in their place was a bit of a pain. While I prayed that she wouldn't be there today, it was in vain, especially on an unlucky day already full of policemen and stock losses. Hello! Ooh. green-eyed, pinkish-haired lady. As I opened the frosted glass door, the woman watching television placed near the ceiling with her head resting in her arms, propped up on the counter, lowered her glance listlessly. Wrong. I didn't mean to click on that. Sorry, people. While I was overcome with the urge to shut the door and go to another store. Man, you must not like this girl at all. The woman raised her voice before I got the chance. Table for one! The kitchen was run by the silent, stubborn, elderly husband of the family, so he never showed any signs of affection. Of course, no reply came from the kitchen. Even so, it was too late to leave, so I entered the store with a heavy gate and set up camp in a corner seat. While mountains of hydrocarbons sat in the moon's poles, they still couldn't be used for luxuries such as making plastic. As a result, most of the store's equipment was made from either wood or iron. Both could be gathered on the moon and were easily decomposable by microbes when thrown away. An iron cup was placed with a clang on my tattered wooden table, which was no doubt found in a dump somewhere. Huh. The woman, beaming, then poured me water from high up. The water seemed like it would splash out, but it all stayed in the now perfectly filled cup. She's skilled. You showed up, you delinquent. Crab omelet over fried rice. I made my order bluntly without a proper reply. The woman was about 20 years old and had bright, healthy hair. She had been working here for a while and seemed to know a lot of the customers, so she probably lived in the area. One crab fried. The woman yelled cheerfully towards the kitchen. Then, of all the things she could have done, she sat down across from me. Except her body was off to the side and her vision was fixed on the TV, she seemed interested in some plot point in the drama she was watching. Why are you sitting in front of me? I heard that the actor there is in the area right now. He's going to negotiate his next title and bask in a space at the same time. A beautiful actress from around here is accompanying him. I didn't ask, but she informed me anyway. I ended up glancing at the screen as I silently took my PC out of my bag. He's a little too handsome, though. While that might be true, I stifled my urge to reply with, so what? As I placed my PC on the table and switched it on. The PC was loaded up with financial information and charts of historical prices for the 4,000 stocks on the Lunar Stock Exchange. In order to make a profit tomorrow, I had to find my next target. Oh, wait. No. Oh, want to use our power? Hey, that's actually a pretty generous offer. I raised my glance after being asked a question and found my eyes meeting the woman's. She had beautiful almond-shaped eyes that were even brighter in color than her hair. Beautiful almond-shaped eyes. She must have led an easy life, I thought to myself. Nevertheless, it'd be helpful if I could use the restaurant's electricity, even if I did decide to go back to that half-assed net cafe. The rates were cheaper at night. The problem was that my battery might not last until then. I silently took out my adapter and plugged it into the cord that the woman, still seated, had lazily dragged my way with her foot. As I hugged the ground in order to plug my adapter into the outlet, the woman mischievously twitched the toes in her sandals. Mischievously? Oh. Perv. Excuse me? That was what she said to me once I raised my head, but she wasn't even wearing a skirt. She wants me to be a perv then. Regardless, naturally I ignored it and booted up my PC. After that, the woman stopped messing with me and the only sounds in the restaurant were the filtered voices from the television and the swinging pots in the kitchen. This was a quiet area without much foot traffic, and it felt like time passed slowly here. The thing that made me go far out of my way to come here, other than the fact that they wouldn't report me to the cops, was this tranquility. What did you eat yesterday? Well, it was pretty tranquil until the woman suddenly asked me a question. What did what I had to eat yesterday have anything to do with you? I ignored her as I stared at my screen, but she wouldn't stop looking at me. Her face, visible from the corner of my eye, didn't make it look like she was particularly interested in the question, but she wouldn't turn away. Defeated, I raised my glance, and at that moment, she grinned. Pasta. I answered, then turned back to my screen. I updated my data while I was in the cafe, so I researched for any corporate news that might affect the market in the next few days. From where? I don't even know what TCH sounds like right now. As I clicked my tongue, so, I don't know. The woman's smile, as expected, disappeared. She didn't get mad or stand up though. That doesn't suit you, you know? She said this so seriously that instead of getting mad, I ended up blushing. She's treating me like a complete child. Big Bull Cafe. It was an arrogantly named place for a nearly illegal operation. You see, bulls were symbols of strong markets. Yeah, it's true. Bear, bull, you know, that stuff. For that reason, there are bronze bulls placed in front of the biggest financial districts in the world, like America's Wall Street or the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So for me, the place was good luck. Huh, so Sirot's handmade pasta. Sirot? Wasn't there a really skinny guy there? That guy owns the place. Owns the... Excuse me, Jesus. I was a little heartbroken at those words. I was sure that he was some loser who worked there by the hour, but to be the owner of a store, big or small, was a fine example of a capitalist. Not only that, I was heartbroken to hear that I was eating his pasta. I mean, it was good. I taught him how to make those. The woman beamed with pride. Wait, if she taught him, then where did they know each other from? Don't tell me they used to be lovers. As I dreamed up juicy scenarios in my head, I stared vacantly at her face as she turned back to the television. Maybe he feels jealousy? I don't know, he seems kind of like he doesn't really like her. So, was that lunch? Dinner? Did you eat for lunch or dinner? I didn't have the slightest idea as to why she was asking for all these details. Maybe she's interested in me, who knows. It was probably because of some stupid made-for-woman horoscope that she watched every day. Maybe I bet it was something like, if you ask a boy you meet today what and where he ate for each meal yesterday, your lucky color is yellow and your lucky word is optimism. Dinner. What about lunch? I had set out to click my tongue, but after being told straight-faced that it didn't suit me, I ended up holding back. Aw. He's listening to her. The woman might have noticed this fact because she was grinning slightly. I answered her after telling her in my mind to shut up. I didn't eat it. Really? This time I didn't keep myself from clicking my tongue or keep getting angry, or from getting angry, for that matter. Why she wanted to know these things in such detail completely baffled me. And what do you care? Right as I turned her question around on her, a plate of fried rice hit the counter with a thud. The woman stood up and brought the plate over. Then, right as I thought she was going to place it on the table, she kept the plate in her hand and looked down at me. Excuse me. You really didn't eat anything for lunch? As if to show her that I was trying my hardest not to click my tongue, I started to scrape my upper lip with my teeth. No, I didn't. I don't eat lunch on weekdays. Don't you know that stuff if you're my secret admirer? Jesus. What about today? Today is an exception, since I was driven out of the cafe at a weird time. So what? Anyways, give me my food that you're just holding there. Eating a proper lunch was something special to me since I usually only did it on Sundays, when the lunar stock exchange was closed. Eating lunch on a weekday was rare. As I glared at the woman, she heaved a small sigh and placed the plate on the table, completely unperturbed. The smell of the sweet and sour sauce whetted my appetite. My interest shifted from the now strangely annoying woman's questions to the food in front of me. You need to eat 3 meals a day. The woman talked to me while standing and staring at me, digging into the fried rice, and eat a little more neatly. Mind your own business, I muttered mentally as I piled a mountain of fried rice and crab omelet on my spoon and shoved it all in my mouth. That sounds really good right now. I'm not a big fan of crabs, but fried rice and crab omelet sounds really fantastic right now. The woman sighed and then returned listlessly to her counter-side chair. What a cryptic, stupid woman. I focused on my food, stuffing my stomach with such vigor that I barely had time to even sigh.